Hello, welcome back. This is the episode 3 of Welcome to the USA Personal Finance Edition. My name is Hui-chin. I'm a certified financial planner and owner of Pavlov Financial Planning. So today we're going to talk about employment. And you might be wondering, am I a career advisor while we're talking about employment when we're talking about personal finance? So there are two reasons. One is, well, if you think about the natural progression, let's say you might be moving to the US with or without family help. And the first step was to get settled. And we talked about it in the last episode where we're talking about credit and how it is important to help you even, rent an apartment, get your cell phone plan and things like that. So, once that's settled, let's say you only have some savings and you get all of your settlement fund in getting yourself settled. And what is the next step? Well, you need to make more money. So this is where, employment naturally comes in. But even for people who don't really have the need to make income right now or choose not to, for example, if you have small children at home and you're just coming with your spouse or some other family member and you're planning to stay at home with your kids for the next few years. Talking about employment is still very important. Why is that? Because employment is not about just money or bringing in money. It's about your human capital. When I say human capital, if you think about it, it is basically your income earning capability. It's not whether you're currently using it, but it's preserving that capability. And if you think about it again, really, you are your own greatest asset. You may be coming from a wealthy background, you currently have a lot of savings, but at the end of the day, if all of those things go away, all you have left is your intellectual capability to make income. So I just want to make sure that this is clear. This is why we're covering employment in the second episode or the third episode of the series, but the second topic, because I really want to stress that no matter whether you have the need to make income or not, learning about employment in the US is important. But coming back to my previous point, I am not a career advisor, so I'm not going to tell you specific steps that you can do to make sure you definitely get a job. But I want to cover some basics just from my personal experience as an immigrant finding first job in the US and even starting my own company in the US. All right, so I'm going to share with you the slide of today. All right, so basically I want to cover two major categories. So first is for people who perhaps did not have professional experience or grew up in a English-speaking country. So I know there are countries where dual language is spoken and you can easily have everything proven that your English is fluent. So I'm talking about countries where you might be fluent in English, but everything that proves who you are or all the professional experience that you had in country were using a language that's not English. For example, I came from Taiwan. We use Mandarin Chinese in everyday life. And we, even though I probably could have used English in my job, if I had the ability, it doesn't mean that I have that experience before. So I think one of the major things you have to do in this situation is basically when you first get to the US, kind of put US-centric thing on your resume. So it's not just so that you have something to put on your resume, but it's really a way to prove that English is not a deterrent and also that you are capable of basically adapting to the US work culture. So basically most common things to get is a degree, a US education, or even if you don't have the money or you don't feel like you need additional education because you're fully capable, something you can do is look into certification that's US based. You might only require you to take an exam or go through a couple of online courses. And then you have a US based certification that you can prove that, well, I understand all of this, how it's applied in the US. Also, another thing could be if you're not necessarily working in an office job, if you have a skill, if you're a hairdresser, if you're an electrician, if you have a specific skill that allows you to being registered in local government or getting a registration. For example, for my job as a financial planner to give investment advice, I need to be registered with state government or the SEC as an investment advisor. So technically, I can forego all the education as long as I can pass that exam to be registered in the US as an investment advisor. I can now show, well, I passed this exam, I'm able to provide investment advice in the US. So of course, I've gone through a lot more than that to get education and get practice and everything. But that's just an example. And furthermore, if you're talking about actually working, before you get your first job, looking for internship opportunities, looking for volunteering opportunities, those are also great things that you can show, not just on resume, but just in building your network, showing people that there is that first step you're taking to be familiar with the US work environment, and your English is definitely good enough to work in the US work environment. And hopefully all of that will lead to your first job. And you will see that on my slide here, I says the first sale. Why do I mean sale? Well, I'm thinking about more like a self-employment context. Sometimes when we go through all of that, it's sometimes circumstances, sometimes where you are currently located, sometimes like if you have to spend a lot of time at home taking care of children or elderly, you simply cannot hold a full-time job, even part-time job. So in that case, self-employment might be a way to go, especially you have specific skills like cooking or some other things that you can actually sell a product for or selling your services. So you can actually start making money or continue with your income-making capability by being self-employed. But I just want to stop here and mention that as it's definitely a way to go, and sometimes you don't even need to register an official company to do so. In the US, you can go with a route, what we call sole proprietor, meaning you can really do freelancing, or if you want to go to other people's house and cut their hair, it's totally fine. You do not need to register a company, as long as you're covered, first of all, with your liability. If you're doing something that might cause harm, for example, like if you're an electrician and you wire the electricity the wrong way and cause a fire, you need to make sure you have professional liability there. But otherwise, you don't need to necessarily have let's say an LLC, a company. You can use your name. And the second of all, make sure you report that on your tax return, right? Like you don't want to make income on the side and not report it. So that's usually the thing that gets you in trouble. But you don't necessarily have to think about, oh, should I get registered as a company? What name should I give my company? Or all of those things that might deter you from actually start doing something. Because as long as you start having your first sale, you can start putting those things in your toolbox, in your resume. All those things start helping you build towards the next step, which is for maybe the other half of the people who are watching this video. You came from an English-speaking country, so that's not an issue. And you have proven English ability in a professional setting. So whether you want to currently work or not, in my opinion, my experience as an immigrant, work in a US context in the last 15 years, I find the three things that's most valuable for me to remember is not having a great resume, is not, have like grammar proof, cover letters. Of course, those are still important, but the most important thing is you continue with three things: qualification, networks, and skills. Networks is perhaps the most difficult to start. Like you might have a network back home, but it doesn't necessarily lend you to any new networks in the US. So here are some potential options. So if you have certain specific profession, look up those profession associations equivalents in the US. For example, for my job, it will be perhaps FPA for financial advisors. And if you are an artist, maybe there are artist associations, or if there are freelancers association, like for writers and editors. Try to start building a network, not necessarily just for finding a job, but for understanding and the context of how does the industry work. And I hopefully, if you're, so this series is going to premiere the first time in the Facebook group for the foreign-born EFMs or spouses. So hopefully in that group, it's also where you can start building some network and learning about experience from other people who might have the same profession or is trying to pursue similar paths. And the other two are pretty straightforward. Eventually, once you have a network and that can point you to the right direction, you just need to prove that you have the qualification and skills. Sometimes skills is not enough depending on the profession. Like I said earlier, I might have all the investment knowledge I have. I might be, a investment advisor with proven record in another country, but without the qualification in the US or registration in the US, showing that I passed this exam, that I just simply cannot practice my investment knowledge in the US. So that's just one example of how skills is not enough. Sometimes, depending on industry, qualification is still important. So look for the certification, the easiest certification, also the registration you might want to be on. And lastly, skill. Like this is perhaps the most important in terms of building human capital or maintaining your human capital. Even if you're currently not worrying about making an income for your family, try to keep up with the skills that you already have. One good, very quick example is like if you're a coder, software engineer, you might have knowledge in certain computer language where you were working on before, but 10 years ago, but now there are more advanced languages, or some of the protocols have changed. Just make sure that you keep your skills up to the current, even though you're not currently using it in a professional setting. So I hope this is a good overview of what I think is important in keeping up your human capital as you move to the US. And I'm sure you're going to find more guidance for people who are specifically in this field, or even like for people who are recruiting for companies. So the last thing I want to mention is just, I know it can be difficult to keep going in this seeking employment route for your first job in the US or in the US setting. And it could be frustrating. Even though I had a graduate degree, and I had basically found a US company job immediately after I graduated from a US graduate school. Afterwards, after I married American and followed him abroad, I encountered exactly the same thing. What am I going to do now? I'm not locally in the US, and my skills doesn't necessarily match why I can get a job in the local economy, and sometimes not even a possibility. So this is one of the reasons I became self-employed and started working in a self-employed environment. So I did not start my own company, and I was very fortunate to have another person that's willing to take me on in his original LLC. So we became partners. But in order for me to have the opportunity, I also put myself out there for at least 6 months to 9 months to looking for different networking opportunities and asking people, do you know anybody who's doing this, the particular financial advising that I want to do that is not based on managing people's assets, but actually providing information that's helpful for people and guiding people. So, it does take time, and I know people who have gone through even longer, but I just want to give you the encouragement that keep going at it. It will happen. Sometimes it requires unconventional thinking of actually doing something on your own. Maybe what you're looking for just simply does not exist, and you may have to start doing something on your own. And if you choose to do that, there are resources and people who can, commiserate or do things together with you. So, keep at it. So this concludes the third episode, or the second topic, of Welcome to the USA Personal Finance Edition. You can always get the checklist and some additional extended reading in my blog, Money Matters for Globetrotters /Welcome USA, and you can sign up to get the full access. And I hope this is helpful, and this is not as long as the second video, and this is my intention. I don't want to keep you in front of a computer too long, but I hope that this is a good stepping stone for us to talk about next step. Once you have income or started making income, no matter how small or large, what are you going to need to know about? So there will be two things: Social Security and taxes. So yay, very interesting topics. So I hope you will join me for those two, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.